My best friend tricked my wife into thinking I cheated. Let me give you some backstory. My wife, Katie, and I welcomed our daughter last December. The birth was incredibly traumatic for both of us, but especially for Katie. She struggled with postpartum depression and started therapy shortly after. We agreed she'd stay home full-time to focus on healing and taking care of our baby, while I would take on the financial responsibility for our household. For the first few months, things were difficult, but we managed. Katie had her therapy sessions, I worked long hours, and we tried to keep our lives steady despite the challenges. Then, a couple of months ago, my boss offered me a major project. It came with a ton of overtime, but also the potential for a big career boost and financial benefits. I talked it over with Katie, and she agreed I should take it. We figured her mom and her best friend, Molly, could help with the baby while I worked. Now, Molly has been Katie's best friend since childhood. She's also a stay-at-home mom with 2 kids, so it seemed natural for her to pitch in. At first, things went well. Katie seemed more relaxed. Molly was great with the baby, and I felt like we had a solid support system. But by the 3rd week of the project, something felt off. Katie started acting distant. When I'd come home after a long day, she wouldn't greet me the same way. Just short answers or no conversation at all. At first, I thought she was just exhausted. After all, she was dealing with a lot. Then I noticed Molly hanging around the house more and more, staying well past dinner time. One night, I came home around 9 or 10, and there she was again, sitting on the couch with Katie. I said a quick hello and went to check on our daughter, like I always do. As I walked down the hall, I overheard Molly say, "See? He doesn't even stop to greet you first." Definitely a sign. A sign of what? I turned around, confused, and asked her what she meant. That's when everything blew up. Molly accused me, right there in my own home, of having an affair. She said I was distant, inattentive to Katie, and using my long work hours as a cover. I was stunned. I had no idea where this was coming from. Then she doubled down, claiming I hated Katie now because of her postpartum depression and weight gain after the pregnancy. I turned to Katie, expecting her to laugh it off or tell Molly she was being ridiculous. But instead, Katie burst into tears, full-on sobbing. Molly stood there with her arms crossed, looking smug, and demanded to see my phone. I refused to hand over my phone. It wasn't because I had anything to hide. It's my personal device, and I wasn't about to let Molly treat me like a criminal in my own home. But then Katie looked up at me with tear-filled, exhausted eyes and quietly asked if she could see it. Something broke inside me at that moment. The fact that my wife, the woman I'd been working so hard for, even entertained the idea that I could be cheating on her. It wrecked me. I handed her my phone. She went through it, searching for anything suspicious. And guess what? She found nothing. No affair, no secret messages, no hidden apps, just work emails, texts, and a bunch of dumb memes from my friends. You'd think that would settle it, right? But Molly wasn't done. She started yelling, claiming I must have deleted the evidence. Her accusations grew louder and more ridiculous until our daughter woke up, crying from all the noise. That was my breaking point. I told Molly to get out of my house. I was done with her drama and her attempts to tear my family apart. She stormed out, furious, while I went to comfort our daughter. When I came back, Katie was still sitting on the couch, crying. I wanted to comfort her, but I was so angry and hurt that I couldn't think straight. After getting our daughter back to sleep, I sat down next to Katie and tried to talk. "Why didn't you just come to me?" I asked her. "If you were worried, why didn't you say something? Why did you listen to Molly over me?" She didn't have a good answer. She admitted she'd been scared ever since I started working more, and that Molly kept telling her the overtime and long hours were signs of an affair. I reminded her that we talked about the project before I even accepted it. We knew it would be intense, but it was supposed to be a good thing for us, not something that would tear us apart. Katie apologized. She said she shouldn't have doubted me and admitted she was wrong to go through my phone. But the damage was already done. Even though she said she believed me, the fact that she thought I was capable of cheating still lingered. It sat like a weight on my chest. Over the next few days, the tension in our house was palpable. Katie seemed like she was trying to make up for what had happened, but I could still feel a cold distance between us. Things weren't the same, and I couldn't stop thinking about how Molly had planted those ideas in her head. It felt like Molly had driven a wedge between us, and no matter what I did, I couldn't close the gap. I thought we were supposed to be a team, but it felt like Katie was slipping further away from me. I decided to scale back my hours at work, even though the project wasn't quite finished. I wanted to be home more, to prove to Katie that she could trust me. I hoped it would help us rebuild what we'd lost. For a while, it seemed like we were getting back to normal. Katie wasn't crying or accusing me anymore, and I thought we were moving past everything. But then, one day, I came home to chaos. The house looked like it had been ransacked. Papers were everywhere, drawers were pulled out, and cushions were tossed around. My first thought was that we'd been robbed. Panic set in as I called out for Katie, but there was no answer. Then I heard our daughter crying from her room. I rushed in to find her in her crib, crying her little heart out. But Katie wasn't there. No note, no explanation, just a wrecked house and my baby girl, totally alone. My mind raced. Had something happened to Katie? Was she hurt? I tried calling her, but her phone went straight to voicemail. Desperate, I called her parents, her friends, anyone who might know where she was. No one had seen her. While I was still trying to figure out what was going on, Katie walked in. Molly was driving her. I saw the car pull up through the window, and relief washed over me for a split second before it was replaced by anger. Molly didn't come inside, thankfully, but Katie did. She looked terrible. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying, but instead of explaining anything, she started yelling. Not the sad, emotional kind of yelling, but angry yelling, like I'd done something wrong. She accused me of cheating again, claiming that the therapy I told her I was starting was just a cover so I could sneak around with another woman. I was in complete shock. How had we circled back to this again? We'd just gone through this whole ordeal, and now here we were. I tried to stay calm, explaining to Katie that I was going to therapy because I needed help dealing with stress and everything that had been happening. Not because I was hiding something, but she wasn't listening. She was convinced that every word I said was a lie. And then, something I never thought would happen, happened. Katie hit me. It wasn't a slap. It was a punch, right in the face. My nose started bleeding instantly. For a moment, she looked as stunned as I felt, like she couldn't believe what she'd just done. Then her expression went blank, and she sat down on the couch, staring at the wall, completely zoning out. No apology, no reaction, nothing. I stood there, holding our crying daughter, dripping down my face, trying to process what had just happened. I knew in that moment that I had to get out of the house, not just for my sake, but for our daughter's safety. If Katie could hit me, what if it escalated? What if it happened again, and worse? I called my mom, asking her to come over as quickly as possible. While I waited, I packed a bag for our daughter. Katie didn't move from the couch the entire time. It was like the woman I married had disappeared, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. When my mom arrived, I quickly explained the situation. She was horrified but didn't ask too many questions. We left Katie sitting on the couch and took my daughter to my parents' house. The drive over was a blur. My mind was racing, trying to figure out how we'd gone from a happy family to this nightmare. I knew Katie was struggling mentally, but I never thought it would get this bad. Once we got to my parents' house, I dropped off my daughter with my dad and headed to urgent care. My nose wasn't broken, but it was badly bruised, and the doctor gave me pain meds before sending me home. That night, sitting in my parents' living room, I tried to explain everything to my mom. But even as I said the words out loud, it didn't feel real. My wife, the woman I loved, the mother of my child, had hit me. I caught my wife's 5-week affair after 8 years together. My wife and I have been married for 8 years. We have 3 children and own a home together out in the country on 2 acres with dogs, cats, and chickens. A little homestead dream, or so I thought. 3 weeks ago, I found out that she had been having an affair for the previous 5 weeks. The day I found out, she had come home from work at 4 p.m. She had gotten drunk at a bar with people from accounts she works with before driving 45 minutes home in the company car and picking up my daughter from daycare. When she got home, she passed out on the floor until I picked her up and carried her to bed. That's when I went through her phone and found everything. although I was pretty sure she was doing something for a couple weeks before that. She had pursued one of her best friend's brothers through Snapchat, sending him videos of her f***ing herself, etc. And there were also plenty of texts talking about how they had sex twice and were planning to do it again and even try and take a weekend trip to the mountains together. And a full confession to being drunk on the job, exactly how much she drank, driving the company car, and picking up my daughter in that state. I documented everything, saved it across multiple drives, and then confronted her that same night. She hasn't denied any of it, but it took at least a week before I could really get all the information out of her. Nothing major, but just small she didn't mention at first. I've gone through all of her devices as well as pulled phone records, and I think at this point I have a good understanding of the timeline of events, and everything I found supports what she is saying. I kicked her out a few days after that, but then let her come back if she agreed to a list of things of demands I had, such as ending this with him on a phone call where I'm listening, no more lies, no more disrespect, no more emotional and physical abuse towards me, I'll get to that, and an agreement to go to marriage counseling and actually work on this marriage and herself if she wants to be here. She agreed and is currently here. Roughly 2 months before finding out about the affair, we had a conversation where she told me she wasn't happy and that I needed to change, or she didn't know if this would last much longer. I heeded the warning and said I would correct the issues she had. And I did, still am. And she acknowledges that I have done what I said I would. These kind of conversations have come up about once a year for the last 4 years, I'd say. In previous years, I would just ignore it and say that she was being emotional and would get over this. A big failure on my part. And due to me blowing her off, she felt like I was emotionally unavailable. I own up to all that and the mistakes I've made. But as soon as I course correct, she cheats. Guess that's what I get. Something that I realized through this so far is how bad she has actually treated me while claiming I'm emotionally abusive, mean, and cold. She has told all of her family and friends how much of a piece of shit I am for years. She tells people before they meet me that I'm an ass, so don't take it personal. And she has told me for the last few years how I'm a piece of shit man, husband, and father. I've been told that so much that I fully believed it. And because I never told anyone what was going on, nobody was ever there to refute it. Now that this has come out and I've started talking to close friends and family about it, all I've learned that I'm actually not a piece of shit. And honestly, that's a hard thing to accept because I was told that for so long by the person I love. I've had to try and take a bird's eye view at my actions, and nothing I'm doing is shitty in any way. I'm trying to swallow my own pride and feelings to try and hold my family together and keep her from this self-destructive path she started. I still go above and beyond for her even after this, and I don't know why. And the apology I get is, I'm sorry I cheated on you, but you were a piece of shit for years and drove me to that point. I also get blamed for her physical assaults on me. You pushed me to that point. And I'm not some frail dude, so I never thought too much of the assaults. I've only had damage done once or twice. Once was nerve damage in my face that lasted for over a year. If I do kick her out and divorce her, she doesn't want to contest me on any of our assets. She just wants 50-50 custody of the kids. She knows what evidence I have, and knows it's a losing fight for her if I decide to take it in that direction. I know this is long, so thanks for reading. And I've refrained from posting on here because I know exactly what the comments are going to say, and for some reason I'd still like to fix this marriage. Even though reading my own story makes that seem like an insane thing to want at this point. I do literally nothing at work for 7 months now, and nobody has noticed. My day is pretty monotonous, to say the least. I arrive at work, set up at my desk, and open my computer. Then, for the next 8 hours, I stare at the screen, pretending to be busy. It's a peculiar routine that has become my life, day in and day out. Most days, I have absolutely nothing to do, and on the rare occasion that work does come my way, it never takes more than a couple of hours to finish. I work in an open-plan office, surrounded by rows of desks and my equally busy colleagues. Somehow, despite the transparency of this setup, nobody has noticed my lack of actual productivity. I guess I'm just that good at looking busy. It's strange, really. My bosses respect me. They even thank me for my great work during team meetings. I've been called a valuable part of the team on multiple occasions, which makes me wonder, do they really not notice, or are they just being polite? This is my first job, an entry-level role in a mid-sized company. It doesn't offer much room for growth, but the pay is decent and the hours are flexible. I initially thought this would be a stepping stone, a way to learn the ropes and gain experience. Instead, it feels like I've been cast in a never-ending performance of The Office, Silent Edition, where my primary task is to look busy while doing almost nothing at all. Every day follows the same pattern. I clock in at 9 a.m., grab a coffee from the office kitchen, and settle into my desk. By 9:15, I've checked my email and responded to anything urgent, which, let's be honest, is almost never. By 9:30, I'm already out of real work to do. That's when the real performance begins. I open up a few spreadsheets and arrange them strategically across my screen. One spreadsheet is an actual document I might need someday, but the others are decoys, random charts, meaningless data, or old reports I keep open to make my screen look official. Next, I open Slack or Teams and type something vague like, "Let me know if anyone needs anything." It's just enough to remind people I exist without inviting actual tasks. By mid-morning, I'm deep into my personal distractions, social media, online articles, or the occasional online shopping spree fill the hours. If I'm feeling particularly motivated, I might even open a book or sign up for an online course, anything to pass the time. Lunch is the best part of the day. I usually eat at my desk to maintain the illusion of being a hardworking, dedicated employee. But as soon as my meal is done, I take a leisurely walk around the block. It's my one chance to escape the monotony of the office. The afternoon drags on. I might get a quick task thrown my way, usually something mindless like formatting a document or updating a small section of a report. These tasks are so simple that I could finish them in 10 minutes, but I stretch them out over an hour or two. By 4 p.m., I'm counting down the minutes until I can clock out. I close out of my spreadsheets, clear my browser history, and make sure my desk looks organized. At 5 p.m. sharp, I'm out the door. What amazes me most about this job is how easy it is to seem productive without actually doing anything. I've mastered the art of the purposeful gaze, the kind of look you give your computer screen that says, "I'm deep in thought about an important project," when in reality you're reading the latest celebrity gossip. My typing game is also on point. Even if I'm responding to a friend's text, I make sure my fingers are moving quickly across the keyboard. From a distance, it looks like I'm drafting an urgent email or crafting a complex report. Then there's my secret weapon, the occasional question. Every now and then, I'll send my boss or a coworker a question about something I already know the answer to. It's just vague enough to sound like I'm actively engaged in work, but not specific enough to generate a real task. What baffles me is how much respect I get from my bosses. They genuinely seem to think I'm a hard worker. During our weekly team meetings, they'll call out my contributions, thanking me for my attention to detail or my quick turnaround times. At first, I thought they were just being nice. But the more it happens, the more I realize they actually believe it. It's like we're all participating in a collective delusion where I'm a star employee and they're brilliant managers. I don't know how long this can go on. Part of me feels guilty for essentially getting paid to do nothing, but another part of me wonders if this is just how corporate life works. Maybe half the people in this office are doing the same thing, just better at hiding it. For now, I'm taking full advantage of the situation. I'm saving money, exploring hobbies during work hours, and trying to enjoy the lack of stress. But I know this won't last forever. Eventually, someone will figure it out, or worse, I'll get promoted and have to start actually working. Until then, I'll keep staring at my screen, sending my vague emails, and riding this wave of corporate inertia. Because if I've learned one thing in my 7 months of doing nothing, it's this. Sometimes, the best skill you can have in the workplace is the ability to look busy.